Well, after that, guys, I definitely can tell why everyone was so anxious for Rick and Morty to return. I just have no idea how you guys were able to put up with the wait, but yeah, intro.
Don't change the channel, don't touch that dial. We got it all on UHF. Take off your
Hey guys, it's Kevin, and this is my review for Season 2 of Rick and Morty. And guys, I was so excited to watch this season, especially after the events of Season 1. Just such a fun, inventive, different kind of show that's different from any other animated show you'll watch. Even BoJack Horseman, it's not nearly as creative. It doesn't mess with its formula as much as Rick and Morty really does. And there's just something to be said about the first season, especially, and how different it was, and how something as simple as a Back to the Future parody made the show, you know, everyone thought it was just going to be a stupid show, but it was so much more multi-layered, it was so much more deep than that, and I was really hoping this season they would keep it up. And let me just say, is Season 2 of Rick and Morty as good as Season 1? Yes, I do think it's as good as Season 1. Does it surpass Season 1? No. Season 2 is basically on the same level as Season 1. And that's not a bad thing. It's really not. If every episode was like the last episode of this season, though, then it absolutely would be better than Season 1. And heading into Season 3, I do think it's going to be better than these first two seasons. And I'll talk about why, but there's not as much to talk about with this season because we already know the characters and things like that. We're just going to dive deeper into the season, talk about things I like, things I didn't like, and where I think Season 3 is really headed as a whole. So the one theme that I really do want to talk about for this season as a whole is the idea of consequence. And yes, this was something that was explored in Season 1, but even more so in Season 2. There's a lot more of characters having to pay debt to what they did, and having to owe debt to someone, and them having to basically, you know, own up to certain things that they've committed. First of all, you know, right in the first episode, we have to deal with that. Because as we know, at the end of Season 1, Summer, Rick, and Morty, they all freeze time so Beth and Jerry wouldn't bust them and they'd be able to clean the house. We realized that it's been about, like, 2 weeks or so before, actually, I think it was like 12 weeks, since that event actually happened, and once things go back to normal, sure, Beth and Jerry are fine, but Rick, Morty, and Summer aren't, because anything that they are unsure about, they end up doubling the time. It causes, like, this ripple effect, and there's, like, 2 Mortys, there's, like, 2 Ricks, there's, like, 2 Summers. I mean, it was a really well-done episode, again, to really show the consequences of what they had to do here, and, basically what they had to do for each other. And it took Rick to finally have to be sure of himself, and finally have to get rid of all the uncertainties that he had, because Rick is very uncertain. That's the thing. Rick is very uncertain about what he really wants. Rick is very uncertain about how he feels about things, because, you know, he'll constantly talk about how, oh, I hate happiness, I hate love, I hate marriage, but you can tell that there's a lot of uncertainty in Rick, and Rick in general is a lot more of a complex character this season. Not that he wasn't in Season 1, but Season 1 we saw more of the very sardonic, very just hateful side of Rick that didn't really seem to care much about his family, that really was just very selfish. And the Rick we get this season is just not like that. He's a lot more caring, he's a lot more emotional, and he's got a lot more going on with him. And that's not at all a bad thing. This Rick is just, a lot of what he's doing, it's really starting to get to him, you can tell. And you see it right here in the first episode, where Rick basically, you know, he tries to save Morty and everything from, you know, basically what ends up happening to him. And, you know, Rick basically, it takes some really crazy steps, but Rick does in fact put time back, and that's a great example of, like I said, the idea of consequence. But more on Rick's part than anything, especially in Episode 3. Episode 3 basically is kind of like this, this sort of like totalitarian sort of government in Episode 3, and, there's this girl that Rick really likes, who we think he had a romance with, named Unity, basically, and things don't really end up well for Rick. We can tell that obviously what he's doing is obviously really wrong in the way that he's speaking to these people. I mean, he's kind of holding them hostage, and it's sort of like this prison or whatever, and basically, you know, there's a lot of like racism issues kind of going on within this episode, and Morty really doesn't like it. And, you know, we think Rick, he doesn't really care. Well, we see as he says goodbye to Unity and as he leaves the planet, he really does start to care. And it doesn't take that to really get him to care. It takes Beth and Jerry, who, they go through this whole thing where Jerry just trying to find a weed whacker, and when they find it, this huge, like, creature emerges, basically, you know, I believe it was for Rick's sake or whatever, but Rick feels very guilty for what he does, and he literally goes to the garage, and he tries to kill himself. Yeah, there's this, basically this, like, gas lamp thing that kills this, like, one, organism, and he wants to do the same thing to himself, but it doesn't work out successfully. We see Rick is completely fine at the end of the episode, and you feel almost worse for him because he feels like this is his way out. This is just the trap that he's in, and he doesn't know how to get himself out. And there's several times throughout the season where Rick does feel very bad for what he does, and he feels a lot of emotional depth for what he does, and that was something I definitely really did love about this season, is how much more we went into Rick's psyche as a character, because you really do go into it a lot more this season. I definitely really did appreciate the way we did get into it. I thought that was definitely really interesting. And you know, Rick this season, he's just a lot more caring towards his family. He's a lot more accepting of his family. You know, he's trying to be part of the family, even though, again, he continues to do all the selfish things that he usually does. He continues to try to engross himself more into this family and become closer to this family, and it works. I mean, Beth starts to get more on board what he's doing. Summer especially, though, probably has the most development out of everyone, because Summer basically becomes part of the key team. It's her, Rick, and Morty, basically, this season. You know, it's not just Rick and Morty. A lot of times, Summer will tag along and get entangled in what they're doing, which I really did like seeing. Summer was the one character who, in Season 1, I didn't really feel had as established of an arc, and truthfully, no, this season, she's not any more well-established, but that's because Summer's just a typical teenager. She's the only one who isn't so self-loathing. She's the only one who doesn't feel so, you know, shitty about herself, and, you know, she's not a bad person by any means, but we do see her have a lot more to do, and that was something that, again, I thought was already an improvement over Season 1. And for Morty this season, Morty is a bit of a different kind of character, because we saw Morty in Season 1, obviously, he was very nerdy. He was just, these things he was doing with Rick were just kind of beyond his imagination. He had no idea what he was really getting himself into. This season, yes, he is still the caring Morty we know, but he's a little bit more hardened of a character, and I really did like it, because again, in a typical animated show, Morty would just be rinse and repeat. That's all it would be, you know, and in something like a Family Guy or something like an American Dad, that's all this would be. It would be Rick torturing Morty and, you know, us laughing at Morty's misery. That is so not what the show is at all. I mean, if anyone thinks that's what this show is, you're watching the wrong show. That is not at all what Rick and Morty is. You know, it's a completely different type of anomaly altogether. What Morty goes through this season, I was really surprised about, but Morty essentially kind of becomes as deadly as Rick. He really does. I mean, there are moments throughout the season where he does kill a lot of people mercilessly. Right in episode 2, there's this character, and it's a fart. I'm not even joking. It's literally a fart character, but this is a character that opens Morty's mind to all these different kinds of possibilities and basically shows him a life without Rick, which is kind of what, you know, Morty really wants. Remember, he doesn't know what his purpose is besides Rick, and basically, as much as Morty wants to connect with this and try to form a bond with this person who can maybe give him access to a better life, he decides not to do it. He actually kills the fart, and he's okay with it. Sure, he feels a little remorse, but he gets over it. He's okay with what he did. Why? Because Morty's just more accepting of this world at this point. Morty realizes that this is his purpose in the world. This is kind of what he needs to do, and you really do see that a lot throughout the season. There is an episode, probably one of my favorite episodes of the season, episode 4, where they have to kill all of these, alien parasites, and Morty's completely okay with it. You know, he's not upset. He just knows that that's what they have to do, and he goes along with it. And a lot of episodes this season, he does that with. Another great example is episode 7, where Rick shrinks himself down to a teenage Rick, and Morty's completely fine with it. He does, you know, Summer is a little bit more on the fence. She's like, it's this really good idea, but Morty's just like, I'll go along with it, it's okay. You know, for Morty, this is just starting to become more normal for him. He's starting to get used to all of these, you know, crazy adventures that him and Rick do go on, and I really did like seeing the juxtaposition of that with Summer. Summer is the more apprehensive one this season. Summer is the one who's a little bit more unwilling to go on these adventures and unwilling to do these sort of things. And seeing Morty being okay with that all of a sudden, I thought was just really good development for Morty. I really did love seeing that. I thought it was really interesting, and especially the lengths that he go here. I mean, there's an episode, in episode 9, Rick and Morty, they go on this purge, basically. Morty literally has this, like, murderous rampage. Like, he just kills all of these people and decimates them one by one, not feeling any remorse whatsoever. So there definitely is this darker side of Morty, and there's something to be said about that. Remember, we know there's an evil Morty out there. We know that. We know that there is an evil Morty that ends up smashing the transporter. We know that, and that's something that's I think we are eventually going to get to in the show. We're going to find out more about the evil Morty, but we can tell how some of that is imbued in the Morty that we all know and love. I think that's something that we definitely saw this season. I think it was something that was definitely really interesting. Again, there's really something to be said about Morty's growth this season. That's something I definitely really did appreciate, is how much more willing Morty is to go on these adventures. It just makes this character that much more enjoyable. It makes us feel like, holy shit, Rick, you asshole, and more like, oh, okay, this kind of makes sense. This is kind of like their purpose. They felt more like a team. Not that they didn't in season 1, but, you know, it was kind of newer to Morty. This was something that, yes, he was kind of getting used to, but there was still, like, kind of like an unwillingness. And this season, he's just a lot more confident about it, and I definitely did love seeing that throughout the season. And as far as Beth and Jerry go this season, again, this is a plotline that was one of my favorites in season 1, and you'd think it would get boring here. You really would. Them constantly having this struggling marriage, going through the same things over and over again. But for some reason, it just doesn't. And again, I think it plays into how normal this is for them. This is a normal thing for Beth and Jerry, and it's sad. It's sad that constantly these two are at each other's throats, and it seems like they're just at the point of leaving, even though they never really do. They're always back. You know, every time that Beth feels like she's ready to leave, she always comes back for some reason. Every time Jerry feels like, I'm done with you, Beth, you know, I have no purpose anymore, he just always comes back, and it just makes it, again, that much more heartbreaking that this is normal for them. And once again, the season really does deepen the layers of some of those characters. Beth in particular really does. But let's talk about Jerry, because Jerry goes through some very interesting things this season. First of all, Jerry was one of my favorite parts of season 1. I said he was my favorite character, and I didn't really mean, like, favorite characters, and if I had to pick a favorite character, it would be Jerry. What I meant is, out of all the characters I sympathize with, Jerry was the one that I really did kind of connect with the most in many ways, and this season, definitely. But what this season does show, Jerry's not a good person. He's really not at all. I mean, there are a lot of things this season that really do show that. Definitely. I mean, there are a lot of things that show that he really isn't this great person or anything like that, which I thought was really interesting, that we saw that he really wasn't a great person. But you still feel this pain for him, because he has this want to be just accepted by people and to be loved by everyone. And this season especially, he's going through a lot. He's constantly pressured by Beth to get a job and do something with his life, because he doesn't really have anything, and he's constantly trying to find ways to keep himself occupied and keep himself interested. And one of my favorite episodes with Jerry this season has to be the episode Total Recall, which I already talked about this episode, but basically this is like a Total Recall parody where basically all the characters have like these fake memories of people that they've supposedly spent years with and gotten to know. They're all alien parasites, and basically the more they give into these alien parasites, the more they will basically take over the world, and the more do multiply and more memories do resurface, obviously being fake memories. But Jerry really gets to spend this time with this character of Sleepy Gary, which, in this reality that, is being created, is Beth's actual husband. Jerry's simply just a family friend. And, you know, basically Sleepy Gary and Jerry, in this reality are a gay couple. Yes, Beth and Sleepy Gary are together, but Sleepy Gary and Jerry did make out once, and you think that there's definitely some feelings there. And I didn't interpret this as Jerry being gay, because someone could interpret it as that. I didn't interpret it as Jerry wants to be gay and that he's hiding something. I interpret it as Jerry feels something real. He feels like he's finally comfortable. It feels like he has someone who actually loves him. Beth and Jerry just don't have that. They really don't. Yes, they're in a relationship, but it has to be said, this is a very forceful relationship. I mean, Jerry constantly is feeling pressure to leave. You know, he's always arguing with Beth. Why do you always, you know, take such comfort in Rick? Why are you always so nice to Rick? Why aren't you ruder to him? Beth's always getting on his ass for not having a job and being so rude. And in general, just not really supporting the family and being selfish, which Jerry really is. But here, they're given a world in which they're able to pretend that everything's better, pretend that everything's okay. And the difference is that they're not pretending. For a while, they do believe it, but they realize that all the good things in their life, that's just not how it is. And in one of the most brutally honest moments of the series, they're basically forced to kill every good thing that could have happened to them, because that's just not their life. They have to kill this butler. They have to kill, this character that bailed them out of an elevator once. I mean, they have to kill all of these characters that aren't real, but make them wish that they were. And again, it really just shows how deep this show gets into the emotional complexities of these characters. And that, in general, I really did feel. I really did feel that moment there. And it just felt so earnest. Like, they really did deserve to have that moment. And I really did feel for Beth and Jerry in that moment. But the most profound moment in that entire episode is this character of Mr. Poopy Butthole. This character, Mr. Poopy Butthole, he comes in here and you're like, who the fuck is this guy? Why is he here? Why is he in all the intros? What's going on with them? I know the name's stupid, but you get used to it. That's the thing with this show. They take things that should be stupid and they actually make them somewhat serious. And especially this scene where you think, oh, he's just another alien parasite. You spend the entire episode thinking that. However, Beth realizes that she doesn't have any memories of him that are sad, you know, because basically the only ones that are alive are the ones that have unhappy memories. And some of them are really soul-crushing. Like, we find out that Beth drinks a lot, and there was even a time where it got so bad that she hit Summer with a beer bottle. And again, it's meant to be funny, but it's also really emotional the way that's done. And that's something that's great about the show. Again, there are those moments where I want to laugh, but at the same time, I'm like, should I be laughing here? I mean, this is just, it's really dire what this family's going through. This is not a well-functioning family at all. They're really not. And basically, Beth kills Mr. Poopy Butthole because she thinks he's an alien parasite, but he doesn't die. All this blood starts to come out and you realize, holy shit, this guy's actually alive. And again, it says a lot that maybe there just is someone in their life that they don't have unhappy memories of. And the way that episode ends with Beth drinking, realizing that anytime something bad happens for her, she just takes comfort in drinking, and realizing this is a problem for her, her feeling great remorse for what she did. I just really connected to Beth even more this season. That was something that I really did love about that. That particular episode, again, really does show how, you know, again, the problems that both Beth and Jerry really do go through. And another great episode with, again, Jerry's selfishness has to be Interdimensional Cable 2, which, yes, is in fact the second episode in the intergalactic cable sort of series, which I love the one in season 1, Rick's Team, and it's one of my favorite episodes of season 1 by far. This one, while not as good, I still really did love it. I mean, it still was a great episode because most of it actually focuses on Jerry ends up in this very bad medical crisis. He has to go to this alien hospital, and he's given the chance to have to donate his penis. Basically, they cut off his penis and donate it to this alien that basically has tons of heroin in him, and Jerry at first is very willing to do this. He feels like, why not? And again, that's kind of the example of, oh, Jerry has nothing to live for. He feels like, why should he keep this around? It makes you think him and Beth don't really have much emotional intimacy, and they really don't. I mean, remember the one episode where Jerry thought that him and Beth actually had sex and they had a good moment, and that was fake. That was a fake reality that Rick, you know, that these aliens created for Rick, Morty, and Jerry, remember. That was episode 4 of season 1. So you know that him and Beth don't really have that emotional intimacy. Why does he need the one thing that gives them intimacy? What good does it give him? But the moment that shows that Jerry really is not a very selfless person, and that he actually is very selfish in that way, and very he's so self-involved, is the moment when he's about to give it to all these aliens, and basically he tries to stop himself after he realizes that this alien basically does a lot of heroin. He doesn't want to subject himself to that at all, and basically, even though Beth told him no, he still does want to do it. And it just, again, it shows that Jerry really isn't that great of a person, and that moment is just really well done, the way they do that. I really did love that. Again, they really do get into the emotional complexities of Beth and Jerry. Again, these are all moments throughout the season, but again, it just really shows how flawed these individuals really are, and shows that these are, even though Rick and Morty, yes, they're flawed, Beth and Jerry are just as flawed. And again, I think that's something that they have shown very well here. Beth and Jerry could have easily just been a very boring couple who just has a lot of really stupid scenarios, but they actually take them to some really deep emotional places, especially this season, and I really did love that. But again, guys, not everything is so emotional and so deep. There is a lot of fun moments this season, and they really do amp up the comedy here, I have to say. I thought this season was just as funny as the first one. There were some moments where I really was cracking up a lot. One of the funniest episodes, again, Interdimensional Cable 2. I never said this, but both of those episodes are completely ad-libbed. They don't, those commercials that they do and all those things you see on the TV, they don't have scripts. They just give them ideas and they're just like, go for it. And that's exactly what they do. And it's incredible what they do. I mean, it seems so fake, but it's supposed to be. You even hear them laughing in the background. I mean, it just shows how shitty this TV they're watching really is. And it's great to watch. I really did love everything but Interdimensional Cable 2. I think it's a really funny episode, and even the stuff with Jerry I really do love. That's probably the funniest episode of the season. Definitely one of the funniest, without a doubt. But probably the funniest episode of the entire season, if I had to pick, I don't know what the absolute funniest one would be. Total Recall is definitely up there. Look Who's Purging Now is definitely up there. Even the finale's up there, which we'll get into the finale in a second. But again, the comedy really did deliver. But again, the way it handles those emotional layers, those two things just go hand in hand so well in the show. And that's something I absolutely did love about Season 2. Again, that emotional stuff just worked really well. It was a really nice blend, and I really did love that. And again, the way it got more into the deeper complexities of Rick and Morty and Barry and, Beth and Jerry, I just thought was really well done, and I definitely really did appreciate that a lot. I thought they did all that stuff really well. Again, Beth and Jerry having marital problems, or Rick and Morty, struggling to stay together, which, again, there's not as many episodes where Morty's like, I don't want to do this anymore. In fact, there isn't an episode this season where Morty's like that. There isn't an episode where Morty turns his back on Rick again, because he's just becoming more used to this, and it's something that he's just like okay with. He understands that this is kind of the role he plays in Rick's life, and he's just kind of subservient to him, which is interesting. But again, he's not completely subservient, because he does go rogue a few times. And again, I thought that, again, was really interesting. Animation, again, looks fantastic. I thought it really looks great here. Score is great. All that stuff is fantastic. But now, guys, I'm really going to get into what I really do want to talk about this season, which is the incredible finale. Because, like I said, this season, for the most part, is just as good as Season 1. In fact, I'm going to probably give it the same grade that I gave Season 1. Finale, however, is a completely different story. The finale is probably the best episode the show has ever done, easily. It is the most heartbreaking. It is the most heart-wrenching. It's also one of the most hilarious episodes the show's done. And in general, just really shows how great of a show this really is. Because we start off, it's a pretty simple setup. Rick is being invited to Bird Person's wedding, which, nothing too complex there, obviously. Bird Person and Rick, they've been buddies for a very long time. We've known this, and basically the whole family gets invited to the planet of Squanch, because Jerry actually ends up getting abducted by one of the, the Squanch thing that wants to send them to the wedding. So they all go to the wedding. Everything's fine. You're wondering, why is Bird Person marrying such a young teenager? You don't really know what that's about. I thought it was going to be a social commentary about, different kinds of love and things like that, but that's not what the show's really doing here. In fact, we find out very quickly in the episode, there are two things I really want to talk about before we get to the big reveal. First of all, Rick makes a speech, and the second you meet, I'm like, oh shit, this is gonna go horribly wrong for Rick, because he talks about how much he doesn't support love and marriage and how he doesn't really want all that stuff. And basically, he actually does, though, even though he doesn't really want to. He does, in fact, in the end of the episode, well, not the end of the episode, but he does at the end of that speech. He basically says, look, I'm not okay with this wedding. I'm not really endorsing it, but you guys are happy and I'm happy. And again, it really just shows the maturity that Rick is really going through this season. And this episode especially is probably his most mature he's ever been. I've never seen Rick as mature as he is in this episode. And that should be a problem. But the fact that it's not just shows how great this show is with emotional stuff, because we see, basically, it turns out that Tammy is actually, undercover for basically the prison. She's gonna send them all to alien prison, and especially Rick. These are a bunch of alien bureaucrats, and this huge shootout happens. And I mean, like, it's of epic proportions. Like, it was extremely graphic. It was clearly so violent, and I was so shocked at where the lengths the show really did go. But I shouldn't be. I mean, we've seen stuff like this before. However, the stakes of those episodes were not as high as this episode really was. I mean, this is basically, you know, everything's kind of been building up to this. Everything Rick's done, every action he's taken, it's been building up to these alien bureaucrats coming after them. So quickly, the Smith family, they have to find somewhere else to live, and Rick puts them on basically a replica of Earth, which is as ridiculous as it sounds. They're literally walking on planet Earth, and, you know, Earth is now invaded, so they have to go to a different planet. And at this point, we get into some really emotional stuff here, because they're living on this planet. And I thought the joke with all the kebabs, that was really funny and stuff like that. But you can tell that they don't really know what to do now, because obviously, you know, Rick is now wanted, but the Smith family's not. And Jerry comes up with this idea that, hey, if Rick is wanted by the alien bureaucrats, what if we just turn him in, and that way we can get back home and Rick will be in jail where he rightfully belongs. However, for the first time, Beth, Summer, and Morty are not willing to do that. They don't want Rick to go away. They don't want Rick to leave. Why? Because they don't want him to leave again. Beth especially is really feeling, you can tell, especially in this episode, she's really feeling the weight of what that really would mean for her. I mean, she spent most of her childhood without a father, and it's really sad. You know, we now know that Rick was probably fighting a bunch of, like, intergalactic terrorists and things like that, but it's still, she spent her entire life pretty much without a father, completely abandoned, on her own, and she had to learn to fend for herself, and she just doesn't want Rick to have to do that again. So they try to make this environment best for Rick as possible, but Rick, he is actually leaving. You know, he goes to South Pole for a little bit, and, which was really funny. The fact that South Pole was literally right there, you know, as he was because again, they're literally walking on planet Earth. They're not, like, in a home or anything. They're walking on a planet, and, he goes into the South Pole, goes into, like, this tunnel or whatever, and he hears exactly what the family's talking about, and Morty and him have this conversation. Morty's conversation was really interesting because it's something along the lines of like, oh, you know, you want me to be your partner? You want to go on your next mission? I'm down for it. And I saw this as, yes, Morty's aware of the role he plays in Rick's life, but he's also kind of trying to make him feel guilty. He's also kind of trying to make Rick feel like, look what you've done to me. Look how you've made me, you know, think that this is my only purpose in life. Because that's kind of what Morty feels like. He doesn't really have a purpose beyond hanging with Rick. So I kind of saw this as like a desperate Morty. Like, please just tell him we can go on our next mission and things will be back to normal. But that's not the case here. You know, Rick knows what he has to do. And in the end of the episode, Rick does decide to, he says that he's going for ice cream, but that's not what he does. What he does instead is he goes onto a spaceship. He says that he is Jerry and basically decides to turn himself in. Yeah, Rick turns himself into alien prison for the benefit of this family, which is something you'd never think Rick would do. But yeah, he makes basically the most selfless decision of his entire life and decides to bring the Smith family back to where they belong. They go back to Earth while Rick now has to suffer in prison. And that last line line where Rick finally says, you know, they ask, what are you in for? Rick says everything. We know what that means. He's not just talking about all the missions that him and Morty have gone, the fact that he's coerced his grandson into doing all of this stuff. It's not about that anymore. It's about the years of abandonment that Beth had to face. It's about the years of misery that he's given to Jerry, the resentment that he has against Jerry, the hatred that, you know, he has for Jerry, the neglect that he's given to the entire family, the drinking problems that he has, the fact that he's suicidal, the fact he's not okay with himself, all that stuff is what he means. And again, this episode is so great that when Rick was so upset, you were feeling upset, but at the same time it was really funny to see him get that one last jab at Jerry. But to finally see him in prison, I mean, it's just such a poignant moment, realizing that, yeah, Rick knows he did wrong. He knows that he fucked up and he has to atone for his sins, essentially, and seeing the Smith family have to go on without him. It's just gonna be really interesting to see where season 3 really does go and where that really does take us. It's just a really fantastic end. It's by far the best episode the show has ever given us. It shows the show taking an idea that they've had the entire show and use it to its fullest potential. Again, the idea of remorse, the idea of consequence. It's finally coming to bite Rick in the ass, and that was something that I really did love seeing at the end of this episode. The thing that really sticks out to me about this episode is, again, how much it really does manipulate with our emotions. On one hand, you're feeling so happy for Jerry at the end of this episode because he finally found a successful job, and in turn, him and Beth's relationship is better, and, you know, Morty's happier and things like that. But at the same time, the family's been so engrossed with Rick that they kind of need him, honestly. He's the thing that keeps their life from being boring. He's the thing that keeps their life from being mundane. He gives them these sort of like exciting worlds that bring them to better places, and we know this isn't really a happy family. And again, the way that the show does that kind of stuff, I really do love, and especially the whole thing with Beth. I mean, the entire show, we've wondered, why are they tolerating him so much? Why don't they just kick him out? Why don't they just want him gone? The reason that Beth has constantly let Rick stay there is, again, because she is so worried about him leaving. It just makes so much sense now, after everything she's done, why she has continually just let him reside there. Why doesn't she just kick him out? Why doesn't she say, all right, we're going to get you into a home? Why doesn't she try to do those things while Jerry is constantly persuading her? It's because Beth, again, has had to go her entire life without her father, that by having him back is giving her enough reason to let him stay. She just can't possibly let him go, and I think that's something that makes Beth that much more tragic of a character. Again, she had that in season 1, but really her tragic failure is her abandonment as a child, and I think that was very well established this season, even more so than it was in season 1. So heading into season 3, guys, there definitely is a lot to talk about here. First of all, we have to have the post-credit scene as well, because we saw a post-credit scene where we saw that Mr. Poopy Butthole basically is alive. I'm hoping we see more of him, because I actually like the interactions we got, and I want to know, how is he not a parasite? Why have we not seen him up to this point? What's really going on with him? We don't really know. We don't know why we haven't seen him. We don't know why he's just kind of around. You know, there's clearly something more going on that we just don't know about yet. But as far as Rick and Morty really do go, you know, how long is Rick going to be in prison? Is he going to get out of jail? I mean, I'm assuming this isn't going to last for very long. I mean, the show is called Rick and Morty. With having Rick in prison for a bunch of episodes, it kind of damages the formula a little bit. So I'm assuming Rick's going to get out very quickly. And if I'm not wrong, episode 1 is, in fact, Rick's escape. I'm pretty sure it is, because I know season 3, episode 1 already aired on April Fool's Day. You know, I know that already happened, so I do know that Rick is trying to escape, obviously. But the big question here is, what is it going to take for him to do that? Is it going to be that his future self finds him? Is it going to be that a bunch of, like, allies find him? I mean, I can't imagine that Rick's going to be in prison for an entire season. I just don't really see something like that happening. But again, I could be wrong. We'll have to see the way that plays out. I think that definitely is going to be very interesting. As far as things go with the Smith family, how are they going to be now? I mean, Rick just made the most selfless decision of his life. So I would assume that the family's going to be a lot more forgiving towards Rick. They're going to be happy to have him around. Jerry is not, because again, Jerry's more concerned about being loved and having people accept him and making sure that he's the one that, you know, planned out these ideas, and he's not happy unless that is the case. So, no, I don't think Jerry's gonna be happy to see him, but since when have Jerry and Rick ever been on good terms? They never have been on good terms, except for when Jerry had that one clone of Rick in that one episode, and, you know, we know he really misses that clone, and because, again, that clone accepted him. It made him feel like he was in a better place in his life, so I think that stuff is very interesting as well, and I'm definitely very interested in seeing where all that stuff really does go in Season 3. Overall, guys, Season 2 is just another really great season of Rick and Morty. It's just as fun as the first season is. It's just as emotional. It gives us some more complexities with a lot of the characters. It even gives Summer a little bit more to do. But I can't say it's better because this faults with Season 1 that I did have. So yes, some of them are improved upon, but not every episode is an absolute knockout. There are a few duds in there, just like there were in Season 1. And I think that's just how it's going to be with a show like this. But the ones that are positive are so positive that I can't help but give the show the same rating. I still absolutely love the season. This is still one of the best shows on TV. If you're not watching Rick and Morty right now, you are doing yourself a huge disservice. You gotta do that as soon as possible. And I'm absolutely going to give Season 2 of Rick and Morty the same grade I gave Season 1, which of course is an A. So heading into Season 3, guys, there definitely is a lot to talk about here. First of all, we have to have the post-credit scene as well, because we saw a post-credit scene where we saw that Mr. Poopy Butthole basically is alive. I'm hoping we see more of him, because I actually like the interactions we got, and I want to know, how is he not a parasite? Why have we not seen him up to this point? What's really going on with him? We don't really know. We don't know why we haven't seen him. We don't know why he's just kind of around. You know, there's clearly something more going on that we just don't know about yet. But as far as Rick and Morty really do go, you know, how long's Rick gonna be in prison? Is he gonna get out of jail? I mean, I'm assuming this isn't gonna last for very long. I mean, the show is called Rick and Morty. With having Rick in prison for a bunch of episodes, it kind of damages the formula a little bit. So, I'm assuming Rick's gonna get out very quickly. And if I'm not wrong, episode 1 is, in fact, Rick's escape. I'm pretty sure it is, because I know Season 3, episode 1 already aired on April Fool's Day. You know, I know that already happened, so I do know that Rick is trying to escape, obviously. But the big question here is, what is it going to take for him to do that? Is it going to be that his future self finds him? Is it going to be that a bunch of, like, allies find him? I mean, I can't imagine that Rick's going to be in prison for an entire season. I just don't really see something like that happening. But again, I could be wrong. We'll have to see the way that plays out. I think that definitely is going to be very interesting. As far as things go with the Smith family, how are they going to be now? I mean, Rick just made the most selfless decision of his life. So I would assume that the family's going to be a lot more forgiving towards Rick. They're going to be happy to have him around. Jerry is not, because again, Jerry's more concerned about being loved and having people accept him and making sure that he's the one that, you know, planned out these ideas, and he's not happy unless that is the case. So, no, I don't think Jerry's gonna be happy to see him, but since when have Jerry and Rick ever been on good terms? They never have been on good terms, except for when Jerry had that one clone of Rick in that one episode, and, you know, we know he really misses that clone, and because, again, that clone accepted him. It made him feel like he was in a better place in his life. So, I think that stuff is very interesting as well, and I'm definitely very interested in seeing where all that stuff really does go in Season 3. Overall, guys, Season 2 is just another really great season of Rick and Morty. It's just as fun as the first season is. It's just as emotional. It gives us some more complexities with a lot of the characters. It even gives Summer a little bit more to do. But I can't say it's better because this faults with Season 1 that I did have. So yes, some of them are improved upon, but not every episode is an absolute knockout. There are a few duds in there, just like there were in Season 1. And I think that's just how it's going to be with a show like this. But the ones that are positive are so positive that I can't help but give the show the same rating. I still absolutely love the season. This is still one of the best shows on TV. If you're not watching Rick and Morty right now, you are doing yourself a huge disservice. You gotta do that as soon as possible. And I'm absolutely going to give Season 2 of Rick and Morty the same grade I gave Season 1, which of course is an A. Basically it for my review of Rick and Morty Season 2. Let me know what you guys thought of this season overall. If you have seen, loved your thoughts on it. If you've seen Season 3, Episode 1, do not spoil it for me. I'm actually going to watch it right now after I'm done with this review. But that's it for this video. Hope you guys enjoy. We'll see you guys in my next video, which will be for a movie review, and I will see you guys for that. Moving forward, guys, by the way, I will only review the season of Rick and Morty, not like episodic reviews. I just don't really see the point in doing that. But I will see you guys for my movie review, and I will see you guys for that. Okay, bye.